versus 3 teamless players, but in fact he did lose to State 2-1, and he had to struggle against Xenocider, finishing with a 5-3 map score record. So QXE is looking a little bit more vulnerable, I think, than most people would have expected going into this. Kane, on the other hand, is looking pretty much unstoppable, but of course we haven't had the chance to really see an awful lot from him. We saw him take down Massa, and then of course we saw him take out Hello Kitty. That's not a big enough representative sample, I feel, to really assess the skill level of Kane.
No, but the thing is, we know that he has the skill because of those ladder performances and whatnot, and it was just a matter of whether or not he would be able to bring it on a competitive stage. And so beating those lesser players, it's not the biggest deal. It's not like beating another high-level pro, but it is demonstrating that he can still do what he does, except when people are watching. So there is something to it. But you're right, it's definitely going to take a lot more from him to really prove that he earned the hype. But beating QXE would probably go a long way towards that.
Certainly, and I think that that very much is a vital skill that you have to inherit, and a couple of players in this tournament unfortunately did not, and as a result they underperformed in their groups. Now, Minigun versus Drunken Boy. Drunken Boy, the second player to go through 4-0 in his group, looking pretty strong, and surprisingly so, in the sense, as we mentioned earlier, that he was playing macro games, he was playing very, very good macro games, and he wasn't doing this one-base, aggressive kind of cheesy play that we have seen from him in the past. And he's going to be facing up against an old tournament favorite, someone that does have a lot of competitive experience in the form of Root Minigun.
Yeah, I didn't watch Drunken Boy's group games because they're all TVZs, and I felt like I had a pretty good handle on his TVZ. I knew what he does just from playing against him on the ladder. But then you told me that he just did straight up macro games throughout all of them, including beating people like Ghostu User. So that was really just shocking to me, because even when he doesn't do the one-base all-in, he's very much so an aggressive player. He loves Hellbat drops, he loves 2-base attacks, if not 1-base attacks. And even in tournament play, like we saw him take out Mia in the WCS qualifier with that 1-base double reactor Hellion SCV all-in, which is about as all-in as you can get.
Pretty much.
If he does it on that stage, then you kind of figure that's just his play style. He's just a cheesy player. So to then bust out macro games and take out those guys, that's really surprising. And originally, I kind of expected Minigun to just beat him pretty easily, because Minigun plays really, really safely, really conservatively early on. He likes to just get up into that heavy macro game, and that seemed like it would perfectly counter Drunken Boy. But if he is capable of actually playing those macro games, then that could be a much more interesting series than I thought.
Yeah, I'm intrigued to see how that one goes down, especially in the best of 5, because as most people would say, the best of 5 mindset is a little bit different from the best of 3. Maybe he does toss one of those cheesy builds in there, but if it's anything to go by looking at the group stage, then it will be macro all around, and I'm interested to see that. And then, last but by no means least, we do have a player that is definitely a cheesy player, but seems to have a bigger selection of cheese than your average Walmart. I mean, it was Hello Kitty who broke out cheesy build after cheesy build, all sorts of different stuff, and actually did show some pretty damn good decision-making, and did make him got him out of his group in second place. And then he's going to be facing off against State, who showed a pretty dominant performance against QXE and against Xenocider, taking out QXE 2-1 and then taking out Xenocider 2-0 to advance from his group in first place.
Yeah, that matchup could be pretty crazy, just given how diverse PvP is right now. It's gotten to a point where almost any build and any composition can work, as long as you keep unit counters in mind. We've gone past, for the most part, past the Mass Void Ray beats everything stage. So when you have two players who are willing to play aggressive and take risks, and especially someone like Hello Kitty, who's been practicing his cheesing through the ladder for the last 2 years, you know, he has a big build repertoire, and they're all really abusive and funky and weird.
Yep.
So that matchup with those players, I don't really have any idea what we're going to see out of them.
No, I don't have a clue either. And Hello Kitty is, as you said, just insane when it comes to the number of builds he can bust out. And it's really hard to predict what exactly it's going to be, except it's probably going to involve either 1 or 2 bases.
Yeah. Well, he does have a 3-base Colossus all in PvZ that he does quite a bit, so you can't limit him that much. But it's definitely going to be something weird and aggressive out of him.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's always exciting to see what Hello Kitty actually breaks out. Now, our first matchup is going to be Puck versus Ghost User, so I'm going to be bringing them both into the call so that we can have a few words between these two. Now, if you were to pull out a prediction on this one, Greg, what would you call? It's so hard to call, I think. I mean, even if you look at the rankings that have been posted, the latest thing on Team Liquid is to post the Aligulik predictions. and everything is looking really, really even going into this one, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, my problem is that I don't really know Ghost User's ZVP that well. It seems like every tournament match he plays is ZVT or ZVZ, and obviously when we play, it's ZVZ. And he is definitely quite a good player. But Puck is he designs very smart, abusive builds, and it's the kind of thing that you really have to know is coming. And presumably they've played on ladder, and Ghost User has some idea what Puck is capable of and will prepare for that. And in that case, I give a definite edge to Ghost User. I feel he is the better overall player. But if anyone can come up with something that's going to catch him off guard in a really difficult to deal with way, it's going to be Puck. But I would give a slight edge to Ghost User, maybe 3-2, with some very silly games involved.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see this, because if these statistics are anything to go by, it's going to be super close, and it's going to be really, really good to watch. We're just going to bring them in on the call, get their cams on, and then once we've done that, we can have a little bit of a face-off interview between these two guys. And Ghost User, of course, is still playing from Europe right now. He is in France and has been told that if he reaches the grand finals, as soon as the round 4 ends, he has to basically get on a plane, otherwise he's not going to reach the studio in time. That'll be amusing to say the least. Just bringing these two guys in right now, and then we'll see what they have to say for themselves. There we go. That's a little bit of setup time required. Now, in the meantime, guys, if there is anything else that you do want to know about this tournament, then feel free to look at SHOUTcraft.com. And also, I would strongly recommend that you check out the Liquipedia page as well. The guys over at Liquipedia are doing a phenomenal job of keeping everybody completely up to date on what's been going on with this tournament. They're often quicker than we are, so I would suggest that you go and have a look over there. And that's also a really good place to have a look at the brackets and make your predictions as well. It will show you exactly the race distribution, as well as information on nationalities and all sorts of things like that. Okay, we have Puck and Gosu User available right here in the call. So, Gosu User, welcome back.
Hello.
How are you doing this fine morning? I believe it's the evening over there in France.
Yep, 8:15. I'm doing pretty well.
Excellent. You're still doing okay surrounded by the French people, right?
Yeah.
You survived. That's, as a British man, I applaud your bravery. Now, Gosu User, you were able to make it through your group, although you did finish in second place. Was it quite surprising, the amount of resistance that you faced in that group?
No. Drunken Boy just caught me off guard, and that's it.
Fair enough. How are you feeling about your Zerg versus Protoss?
Well, Protoss is kind of, I feel like it has a definite advantage right now in HOTS, but in practice games the last couple of days, I've been winning about 80% of my games, I think. So, against good players, too. So, I think I'm comfortable.
Puck, welcome back.
Hello.
Now, you managed to make your way through your group in first place. I think you convinced an awful lot of people there. Really, really good result from you. Now you have to face up against Gosu User, which is kind of like getting out of the frying pan and into the fire. How do you feel about that?
Pretty confident. I played him in Acer Team Cup or whatever, and he left without GGing, so I think he's very uncomfortable versus me.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Leaving without GGing is a sign that I'm uncomfortable.
I don't really agree with that.
I'm sorry, that was funnier than it should have been. Alright, anyway. So, Puck, you did face off against him quite recently. He left without GGing, so this is now a best-of-5 series. Acer Team Story Cup is, of course, a best-of-1. Do you really feel that a best-of-1 single map in a team event is actually representative of your ability against Gosu User?
It's pretty one-sided, so...
Best of ones is where Protoss is best. That's why you see them owning in Pro League all the time, and then losing in everything else.
No. I honestly think Ghost User is a pretty good player, but we've had a pretty long history, so I'm sure he spent all last night thinking about what he's going to say today and forgot to actually practice, so I think I'll be fine.
Okay. Alright. Well, Ghost User, since you spent all last night preparing what to say, do you have any final words for Puck before we go into this game?
I didn't actually spend any time thinking of what I'm going to say, but I think Idra and Puck were the two players I wanted to knock out of a tournament the most, because both of them have kind of a bad reputation on ladder. And I didn't get to play Idra, unfortunately, but I'm happy that I'll be able to knock Puck out of this.
Of course, Gosu, you are the peak of politeness on ladder at all times, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Puck, your final words for your opponent today before we enter this best of 5.
Best of luck. I guess this will be the end for you, so hope to see you at the next lands in America.
Alright, guys, to your stations. Let's get ready to rock and roll. This is going to be a good match, one way or the other, I think. It's so nice to see banter between friends, isn't it, Greg?
It really is. It makes it much more exciting, and especially now they have to back it up.
Yes, they very much do. You can't brag if you don't have any means to actually back that one up. We're going to be going into the lobby very shortly. First map's going to be Star Station. Now, recent change for the tournament, since the tournament very much follows the ladder, we will be using Star Station with cross spawns only. I'd love to hear what your thoughts on Star Station, actually. This has been a map that's been vetoed quite a bit in this tournament so far.
I feel this is a really good map. Again, I don't really know Ghost User's CVP style that well, but I feel that this is a really good map for Zerg in general versus Protoss. That's a pretty general consensus. And the big reason is that Protoss gets really strong if you let them to get to the late game and they manage to secure 4 bases and a bunch of tech. But in the mid game, that's where Zerg really shines. The mobility and strength of the Mutas, the new Hydra, just the generic strength of Roachling attacks before 200 supply, all of that against a very exposed third. Like we have on this map, that all works out really well for Zerg, because what Zerg wants to do is be putting pressure on their opponent before it actually gets into that late game situation, and a difficult to defend third is the biggest factor in whether or not that's likely to work. And this map, Star Station, probably has the most exposed third in the competitive map pool right now. So I would be really surprised if we don't see Ghost User trying to apply some pressure there, and I would also be pretty surprised if it doesn't work quite well.
Yeah, you're totally right in that respect. It's every time I've seen a pro actually take a third on this map, it has been the point of contention, which has basically made or break the game for them. And if they can hold on to that third, they generally are the guys that end up winning. It's such a strange map in that respect. It often starts off very, very passively and then just explodes once it gets to the 3 base point. We'll be going into this momentarily. Of course, it will be a Puck versus a Ghost User. It's best of 5. That means that with our 5-map pool, everything is currently in play, and it's the loser picks format. A coin flip determined who picked the first map, and then, of course, whoever loses will be able to pick from the remaining maps in the pool. If we go all the way to 5 games, it will be whatever is left. So there's a little bit of strategy involved. Neither of these guys would, of course, want to end up on a map that they're not particularly comfortable with, but considering it is a ladder map pool, chances are they're pretty well practiced at all of it.
Yeah, did Ghost User win the map pick? Is this his choice?
That is a great question. Let me double check for you.
I would be very, very surprised if Puck chose this. If he did,
it's actually Puck's choice.
That's very surprising. Maybe he wants to get out of the way. The other option is that Puck really, really likes abusive, high-tech, kind of greedy early on, and then transitioning into a very powerful 2-base all-in kind of build. And so maybe he has something special like that prepared for this, and that's what we're going to see out of him. Because this is just definitely not a good map for Protoss if it's going to go into a macro game. Like you said, that 3rd base is always a point of contention, and Zerg wants to have a point of contention in the mid-game, because that's when they want the fights to happen.
Indeed. Well, I'm intrigued, certainly, and you may very well be right. You've got Puck actually playing a legitimate best of 5 here, rather than saying, oh, I don't like this map, but he knows that that map is going to be involved in one way or the other. So, as we have a couple of early game jitters, which will hopefully even themselves out, welcome to Star Station, and the first map of this best of 5 series in the SHOUTcraft America round of 8 to the northwest position in the Red Trunks playing Protoss. It is Root Puck versus his opponent to the southeast position in the Blue Trunks, playing Zerg. Playing from France right now, it is Millennium Gosu User. Now, Puck immediately going to the front here, looking to start with the wall off. Most likely going to be a Forge Fast Expand play here from Puck. A little bit safe.
Yeah, this is not... You will see Gateway Expansion on pretty much every map every once in a while now, because the power of the Mothership Core, along with various gateway rushes make that just kind of a generically good build choice. But this is not an especially good map for it, because obviously with cross positions it's quite long, so the rush distance makes all of those kind of builds worse. So it's not really surprising to see this, but particularly from Puck. Puck's very much so a Nexus first, Forge first kind of player. You almost never see gateway expansion out of him, so not particularly surprising. Big point here is that it is cross-map only. On ladder, obviously all 4 positions are open, but cross-map only, that's actually a very, very long rush distance, which actually makes that third a little bit easier to secure, so it kind of changes the way this map works in general. It also lets both players know where their opponent is going to start, so there's no ambiguity about scout timings or anything. It's not like Ghost User is going to be able to go 10 pool and hope that Puck doesn't scout it in time, because since it is a 2-player map, we're going to see much more generic gameplay, and they don't have to worry as much early on because of that lack of scouting information.
Yeah, and it's a strange paradigm as well, because as you accurately mentioned, this map on ladder used to be all 4 positions available. As of yesterday, they actually changed it to cross only. So,
really?
Yeah, which
I did not know that.
Yep, that apparently just happened last night. I was informed by my admin, which is why we sort of changed things around a little bit. And that's weird, because that's not what these guys are used to. They have to keep the idea in mind that if they end up on this map on ladder, then the opponent could be anywhere.
Yeah, and even in other tournament editions, a lot of the time it's been vertical positions or horizontal positions will be disallowed, but then the other one is available, so it's still kind of a 3-player map. Yeah, I think this is this may actually be the first time they've played on it as a 2-player map, so it's definitely a little bit of a mix-up for them. Yeah,
I believe MLG uses the cross-spawn only version recently, but GSL uses the version that you described right there, so there is a little bit of variance in that.
Mm-hmm. And we see Ghost User opening without a gas. This makes sense against Forge or Nexus first, and he's just not getting the scouting information. He would have had to put gas down a little bit earlier to be comfortable, so I think he definitely knows. Actually, a pause from Ghost User.
Most likely it could be a lag issue, actually. He's just going to try and resolve that. Every now and again, he seems to have a couple of lag problems, but yeah, we'll have a quick pause here as we go along. But sorry, Greg, as you were saying.
As I was saying, if your opponent is going gateway expansion or something like that, you obviously want to open up gas to get speedlings out to control any kind of early rush and anything that's possible because of that fast gateway. And so the fact that he didn't have any intention of opening up speed or gas or anything like that, he's probably pretty comfortable with the way Puck plays, the fact that he's going to be Nexus or Forge first, just because that's pretty much a staple of his style and something he's going to see every time on ladder, so he definitely knows what he's playing against, and so he is going to go gasless 3-base.
Alright, and we are back into the game. Everything all sorted out now. I'm interested to see what Puck decides to do behind this. There's a couple of ways that you can get out of this Forge defensive kind of build here, and the gateway +1 pressure is perhaps one of the classics, and that is often augmented by the fact that you have the mothership core now, so things can be a little bit funkier. But we have seen quite a lot of Protoss also going for a heavier Stargate play. We used to see a couple of Void Rays in the +1 gateway pressure, but now we're actually seeing people throwing in Phoenixes and occasionally even an Oracle into this matchup. Now, having seen Puck play in this particular matchup, what kind of strategy would you expect coming from him?
Yeah, I'd say if there is a standard, a go-to build in PvZ right now, it's the 5 Phoenix into a 3rd base with pretty fast Colossus, but I really don't think we're going to see that from Puck. Puck really likes very heavy tech builds, not so many +1 Warp Gate rushes or anything like that, but very much so the fast 4 gases, fast Stargate, and then a fast robotics afterwards, and then some Void Rays and followed up with an Immortal or a Colossus all-in. That seems to be his go-to cheesy kind of build if he wants to catch his opponents off guard or get a free win or an early win. And that would be good on this kind of map. That is what comes to mind when I find out that he actually chose this as the first map for the series. Do something like that, get a bad map out of the way, maybe get a free win just based off the strategy. And we do see those really early 2 gases coming down before even the 6-minute mark at Puck's natural. So that definitely could be the case.
Yeah, we also see a second Forge actually following up here, which is... that
in
is
very strange.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I generally don't see a second Forge follow up this kind of opening with the Nexus then and the Forge at the front. And it's actually, it's stored really far back as well. And it seems like the positioning almost like Puck wants to hide it as much as possible from Overlord scouts from the southern position. What do you make of this? I mean, generally speaking, when I see the double Forge play, it's very much for this big gateway Colossus timing on 3-3. What do you reckon?
It's definitely intended to be hidden, and we also see a Twilight Council going down.
Oh.
So couple of options there. Either going for a mid-game timing, like you said. However, that seems pretty unlikely on this map because to actually take a third base, which would be necessary for a later, bigger timing, take a third base while going all those upgrades, that would be really difficult to defend against any kind of aggression. So I think the more likely option is that it's going to be Blink Stalkers with very quick... I don't know, the Twilight Council actually opens up the possibility. We see the Twilight Council and the +1 weapon upgrade are timed to finish around the same time, so I think at least +2 weapons, at least +1 armors, that's already been started. Blink Stalker all in, maybe 2-2. I'm not really sure about the timings because this isn't a normal build. This isn't something you see people do. You don't see 2 forges off off 2 bases almost ever. So this is definitely something weird, something that Puck has thought out, and it's most likely a design build because again, I don't want to keep harping on it, but it is a very weird map choice for Puck. So almost definitely something that he has prepared for this kind of situation. And there we see a bunch of extra gateways go up. So almost definitely going to be a big upgraded Blink Stalker all in.
Yeah. We actually do have Charge coming in, which is... Now that is just weird. Like, I don't think I've ever seen that. And Blink, the kind of +2/+2 Blink Stalker all in on the double forge is definitely not uncommon. Like, it's a pretty powerful build. Charge and then throwing the Templar Archives down indicates to me that we're looking for some kind of Chargelet Archon build, which is kind of unusual, I've got to say.
Very unusual, even more unusual. Like a 2/2 Blink Stalker all in. Blink Stalker all in is very common. Blink Stalker all ins with 2 forges, not very common.
Yeah.
Chargelet Zealot, or Chargelet Archon all ins with double forge. I don't think I've ever seen anyone do an actual build just like this. And we're actually up to 9 gateways now, so this is going to be a very, very heavy attack. Is there a forward pylon down here? There is a forward pylon up in the top right, and he'll move forward, put down another pylon as he starts to get aggressive with that. We see a bunch of Hydras and Roaches on the way from Ghost User, though, and that's exactly what you want to hold this off. The Hydras are going to provide great DPS in the background. The Roaches are one of the only things that can actually tank the damage from the Zealots and the Archons, and really the army is just not too big just yet from Puck. So really... The only thing that's going against Ghost User here is that he doesn't really have any creep spread at all, and he doesn't have any spine crawlers. So he doesn't have any help holding this off, but he has a very good unit composition to try and fight this army versus army.
I'm interested to see how... Ooh, there's a quick cancel there by Puck, backs off with this pylon. He's going to place it slightly further back here. I'm interested to see how much the upgrades really kick in here, because it's a 2-1 attack versus 0-0 on the range and armor there. We don't even have range upgrade for Hydras. So I have to wonder, well, we're about to find out, aren't we? Because here it goes, the time warp behind that as well, and the big engagement on the front with the Zealots running right into the Roaches, and of course getting hit really hard by the Hydras at the back there, but the Archons really didn't get a chance to get involved in that fight.
Yeah, the Archons didn't engage. The upgrades were good, the force fields were good. We saw the efficiency of the Zealots against the units they could attack. There's just not enough stuff. The problem with getting those upgrades early on, you're sacrificing a ton of resources that could go into army or infrastructure. We saw how much it slowed down the attack and just how tiny the army is compared to Ghost Users. And to Ghost Users' credit, he responded to this perfectly. He didn't overdrone at all. He committed everything to getting to Roaches and Hydras very quickly, which is smart against Ghost User because you really need, or against Puck, because you really need those Hydras to hold off a lot of these high-tech all-in builds that Puck prefers. So Ghost User played this perfectly, but really just kind of, it was really a cheesy build. Puck was hoping that he would catch Ghost User off guard, and he didn't really. Ghost User just had a big army and won that easily. But Ghost User here is actually pushing in pretty aggressively, and if he's not careful, he could end up losing that army, but it's looking like he's going to be able to push on through.
Puck throwing the Militia Core away there with no energy. That is to be expected. More force fields going down. Force field play here by Puck's been pretty good, but he is still fighting against a much, much larger army. The Archons are finally able to really get into the mix, but one of them is, and there goes the second one, in fact. The army just crumbles under the firepower there as +1 completes, range completes for the Hydras, and there's the GG, and that was a pretty rapid game there.
Yeah, definitely. That was just a designed build from Puck, and it didn't end up working out. But again, it is Star Station. This has to be one of the maps. Maybe this and Planet S are probably going to be Zerg's 2 favorite maps out of the ladder pool. And so getting this out of the way, just doing a silly build that doesn't really say anything about how else you're going to play. He didn't give his opponent any information. He obviously gave up a 0-1 map score and a little bit of confidence, but it's about the best you can do with one of your disadvantage maps. So it's not the end of the world. It's just going to be a matter of how well Puck can actually transition from that into the next games.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, really. Getting into this situation where it's just this weird build that we haven't really seen before, 9-gate Chargelet Archon what? I mean, I don't even know what was going on there, honestly, but it was so weird to see, but it's hard to really tell what kind of form Puck is in after that. I think that you can read into maybe how badly the initial engagement went. The Archon's kind of in the wrong position, not really able to actually hit anything, and then getting into a situation where your army just melted against a far superior force. Even if you had those upgrades, it didn't really seem to make that much of a difference. But again, you're totally right. It clearly was not the kind of map that Puck was looking for. Now Puck's actually picked up Belshir Vestige for the second game.
Yeah, that's much more comfortable map for Protoss. There's tons of tiny little choke areas and ramps and high grounds that can be controlled with Colossus play. Just a much better map for Protoss in general. Also, the third base is it's a pretty long rush distance from your opponent to your third base. It's very backset, very controllable. Just a much better defensive map in general. So Protoss does have the option of going into that macro game, but Puck does love 2-base all-ins. But the fact that the third base is a viable option, that means that Zerg has to play differently than they can on a map like Star Station. With a third base at exposed, Ghost User is safe to just make 60, 70 drones and then go straight into mass unit production like we saw last game, because if Puck actually does try and take that third, then those units that could be defensive can also become aggressive. But on a map like this, where the third base is so defensible, if you cut drones early on and then make a ton of units, there's a pretty good chance that if Protoss plays defensive and takes that third base, they're going to be able to hold your attack just fine and then end up way ahead in the economy. So this game, Ghost User has to either make a guess or he has to play much more carefully than he did last game. And if he takes that guess and guesses wrong, then he could lose because of it. So Ghost User's not going to be able to hard counter as much this game. So Puck, whether he ends up going with a 2-base or the 3-base play, either option is much more powerful and scary for Ghost User.
All right, well, we'll find out after this break, folks. You're watching SHOUTcraft America. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, Game 2 of Puck versus Ghost User on Belshir Vestige. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to SHOUTcraft America. Game 2 is on its way. Belshir Vestige will be the venue for this particular matchup, with Ghost User leading 1-0 in this best-of-5 series. All right, these guys looking about ready to get started. And then we can get right into it. Now, I'm hoping to see a little bit more of a straight-up game, honestly, here from Puck, because that build was odd and didn't really do much.
You honestly might be kind of out of luck. That's the kind of build that Puck absolutely loves, PvZ. Totally capable of a macro game and of doing it quite well, but definitely prefers those really designed, prepared, kind of odd